I'd like to bring this meeting to order, and with that, I would like Reverend Alderman Davis to do the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And for those of you who have not been here for a while, we use this flag, so you'll be facing forward, okay?
Let us pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you for the boundless creative spirit that abides in our community and enriches each of us whenever we see and hear the wonders you inspire. We ask today that you guide us to learn what you want us to know, to the greatest benefit of all who live, work, and visit this city that you have so greatly blessed. Amen.
Let me start off by thanking everybody for attending. And do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. So we're on agenda item 1, which is a presentation by the Center of Creative Arts. But I don't know who is actually speaking. Okay.
There we go. Morning, everybody. Thank you for having us here. I was last here in June, I believe, and we presented at that time with what our proposal would be, and I believe subsequently you guys agreed to have a couple of follow-up meetings to determine some of the finer details and maybe develop a path forward on getting this project off the ground. So I think what we're all here for is today is we're concerned about the fate and the future of the building across the street. And, you know, I don't want to go over the entire presentation that I previously did, but just briefly, you know, we have a collective goal to preserve this building, and we're offering the city and the citizens of Southport here an opportunity to fully fund that without using taxpayer dollars, and then maintain this moving forward while enriching the culture and the history of this town and maintaining the image that we have here. And also producing a lot of revenues and bringing people to the area. So what we had in mind for the Center for the Arts in Southport would initiate construction based on plans that we can determine here and provide a multi-use portion of that building that the aldermen would have as a use for chambers moving forward. And basically today we'd be asking to collaborate with you and determine what it is that's non-negotiable on your end and find out if we can meet those needs so far as meeting time and space constraints, and determine what those finer details might be. We know, I think you guys are required to meet a couple times a month. I think it does happen more than that from time to time as needs may come up. But I think based on the programs that we have in mind on our end, performances and things like that, we can work around each other's schedule and make everybody happy. We have some plans drawn up, and they're all in the handouts that I provided. That's pretty much the same as I presented last time, of a basic floor plan that's drawn up. And of course, this is all subject to change depending on our collective needs. but primarily the dual-purpose convertible meeting space and performance hall. And there's a couple of smaller meetings where I guess you guys would be able to meet, maybe not in such a formal setting, and carry on some business as needed. So really, I didn't want to do too much talking today, but rather listen and find out what it is we can do to get this thing going forward. Just a brief recap of the history of the thing. It was conceptualized back in 2019 with another organization, being Up Your Arts, and the town entered into that memorandum of understanding. And this board was established about a year ago, specifically with the goal of repurposing the building from start to finish, and then maintaining and operating that building, which we have met and been meeting for some time, and developing that plan on our end. But now we're at a point where we need a mutual agreement with the city, being the owner of the building, to allow us to raise funds and move forward to get the project off the ground. So at that point, we're ready to move forward. We just want to know how we can help the town and make everybody happy, give everybody what they want, and make sure everybody is getting what they need out of the deal. And I don't know if you have questions or concerns, but we're here. I believe we have several committees on our board, and there's a representative from each committee here today to answer just about any question you might have based on what we know at this time. So I would entertain questions that you might have or concerns.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, you said you guys stand ready to go forward. What form does that readiness take? Are you financially ready?
Oh.
Do you have architectural plans that have been approved by anybody? I mean, describe the readiness.
So the readiness would be, we are assembled and prepared. We have a multi-year plan to achieve our goals. We've set deliverables, and we're sort of in abeyance right now until we can get an agreement with the city. So financially, to answer your question, no, we are not ready. If we estimate this project to be $4 million, no, we can't in good faith request funding from other sources of any kind, really, without some kind of agreement in place with the city. So we do not have funds for this project right this minute, but we have a plan to move forward once we have an agreement.
Go ahead, Alderman Marcelo.
Okay. The standing ready, this is what occurs to me because I looked at an old Pilot article about your membership on your board. Just to name a few of the backgrounds, it includes a business development manager, a financial manager, a federal grant manager, marketing strategist, commercial construction manager, hospital administrator, manufacturing engineer, theater trustee, and that's only just about less than half of the backgrounds of the people who've stepped forward. So I appreciate everyone's expertise and willing to share with the town. My question is that, we've long talked about having the chambers upstairs be for the aldermen's use. And I know you're also, in your business model, it's my understanding that, having some performance space is also part of what y'all's success conversation is. Stop me at any point if I'm wrong. But I'm wondering if we could designate the chambers to city use Monday through Friday until 1 o'clock. Then that would give you weekends to do performances or whatever and set up, but would give us our full access to chambers, reasonable access to chambers.
So those times were when again?
Like starting Monday morning until Friday at 1, so that
Okay.
we have, like we've had today, we've got meetings called this morning, and now we've got an emergency meeting at 6 this evening, so that I think that's what we're looking for, is that kind of situation. Long-term, that's like a long-term solution.
Right. Right, so those are the types of things that we have to consider. Because as, you know, weekend performances, I think, would be primarily when they would happen, and probably in the evening. And I understand emergency meetings would occur from time to time, and we would want the city and the aldermen to be prioritized for those kinds of situations and set up for that. So our program committee could potentially take this information and come up with a more concrete plan that could accommodate that type of situation for you.
One question, kind of piggybacking on Alderman Mosteller, in I guess June or July, we had like 8 or 9 meetings. So we are swamped. And not only that, you have the planning board, the Board of Adjustment. There are other boards that meet on a regular basis. So that needs to take some sort of priority. Now the weekends, if we meet on weekends, we're starting to get in trouble here.
Yeah.
But, you know, during that weekday period of time, we never know. A lot of times we don't know where we're going to meet because some other function can kick us out. As an Indian Trail, whether it's here, we've met at the old firehouse, we've met at the current firehouse. So we need some way that we can control that period of time so we know that that's blocked off for us and we don't have to be scurrying around to find somewhere to find a home to have a meeting.
Alderman Mosteller mentioned that we have a meeting tonight. This came together in a hurry. And if we had not known that we could get into a particular, and we always have to assume that it's going to be at least 100 people here. And a public meeting, we've made the commitment to, for our meetings, as well as for the planning board, that these will be recorded and online, and people are able to watch it live as well as see the recording afterward, which pretty much limits us to here. But we are anticipating putting a great deal of money into an audio-visual program, all of the equipment and everything else that's needed to do a much better job of our online meetings. And so how would we deal with a conflict if, for example, you had made a commitment to a performance group to be using it tonight, and tonight is when we have to meet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I fully expect the performance hall to be capable of the technology that you're looking for and be part of, you know, the fundraising commitment.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's not the equipment.
No, the timing.
We would be the
I
one putting in
I
the
understand your
equipment,
question.
but the time and
Yeah.
the place.
What I was getting to was, I'm not sure, and this is because this is technical questions out of my realm, but possibly some of that equipment could be portable. So let's just assume that the aldermen have a standing reservations, but in this situation where you need to have an emergency meeting, perhaps some of the equipment is portable, and you will not lose access to where you're currently meeting, as I understand it. So if it came to that, and you had an emergency meeting and had to meet here again, for example, could some of that technology and equipment be moved into this space and set up to accommodate the audio-visual requirements that you're looking for to put online? So,
We had that conversation, and the answer to your question, and I'm not a tech guy, is no. We can't move the equipment back and forth like that. And then the equipment that would be hanging there we have to get some better screens. You know, the whiteboard that normally is right behind you was 20 years out of date when we bought it. And we paid top dollar for it. And so that stuff has to hang on the walls. And it has to be big enough so everybody can see it. Our population is such that we have to have it big so they can see it. So that's a problem that we have in on that regard. Robert?
I think that maybe it's not clear enough that, I don't think Karen's really suggesting Monday through Friday until 1. I think that she's telling you that is her requirement, and I'll just say that that's also mine. So Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock is the very least that I would accept personally for that space. So that we're not planning to move around. The whole purpose of this in that space is that it is the space. So, and to Frank's point, if we start meetings on weekends, I'm going to ask for a raise.
Well, my only concern about that whole thing is that if you're putting on some kind of play or some kind of thing, and the stage is behind us, the desk that's over there.
Yeah.
Is that camera going to be picking up all the stuff that they had to put in there way beforehand? And is there requirements for rehearsals? When would they do that? Do they just walk in on Friday night and start doing the act? Or do they think they're going to have a rehearsal and we then need to kick them out? I don't know that we've thought through that whole process yet.
Well, I'm just saying it's non-negotiable for me. So that wouldn't be a problem.
One of the problems that I can foresee is you have something scheduled, an emergency meeting comes up. What would take precedent? This is, let's say, a decision that has ramifications throughout the city, maybe the county, everywhere else, and we have got to meet quickly. What would take precedent? What would be the decision-making process on who would go where and how?
Well, yeah, that's stuff that we'd have to figure out. But what I'm hearing is that if we can meet your requirement, that would be an unlikely situation. So what I would need to do is take the requirement, a minimum use requirement, and talk to our program folks and base it on a general operating budget and operating revenues being performances. Can we survive and sustain only on weekend performances? So that's what I'm hearing. So we need to figure that out. And if we can accommodate that, then I don't think the timing and priority will be an issue.
And I think too, in part of your deliberation on that is also what Rich said, which would be entertaining how those two ends work together. And I think that's when you were talking about what type of performance or this or that and what their needs are around that.
Steve, come up here. Yep. I was going to ask about this board that you're talking about. Are those made to be retractable or at all? Or
I wish they were.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why they're not in this room, because we rent this room out for weddings, and they don't want them.
Yeah.
So we have had to go with virtually no technology, and the technology that we have, if an alderman can't be here for some reason, and they can't, if they dial in, this is our technology, I'm going to see her face. That's all I'm going to be able to see. And if I want, pretty as it may be, if I want to talk, I have to wave my hand in front of my screen to catch her eye so she can look down and then hit a button to allow me to speak. This is archaic, okay? This is archaic. So the whole system is too old, and we have to be able to figure out how we're going to do that. So these screens have to hang there. If you look at any council member's office, there's set things here. Each one has a screen in front of them, so they're looking at their screen, and behind them, just go over to Oak Island. They have done a terrific job, and behind them is the big screen, and off to the side there's big screens for the audience to look this way. Everybody gets to see everything. If you have come to these meetings, you know time and time again, people are throwing things down on our desk to read while the conversation's going on. You never get to see it. We can't give it to you, and it's not already downloaded into any kind of machine. So those are some of the sticking points that we have about the technology. Not because we want to buy only things that can hang on the wall, it's just that we haven't figured out how to do it any other way.
Real quick, hi, I'm Steve Tabank, and I'm on the board, primarily PR and community relations. It's very clear that the needs of the aldermen and the civic needs are important, and we need to find a way to accommodate it. Just real quick question is, relative to a size of the space, so, you have the floor plans and renderings and such. We understand that we'll need a sizable space for the regular monthly meetings and stuff, but the norm, I guess my question is, would a conference room space be acceptable and usable in certain situations, or will all your meetings necessarily need to be in the main ballroom, as it were?
When we have meetings, this whole board is united that it will be broadcast.
Understood.
So we need the big room. We also, when we have meetings, unless it's a closed session for some, legal issue, we have committed, the whole board has committed that everybody can come in and watch. If you stick it, the problem that we have with Indian Trail is there's like a dozen seats. When we have meetings in there, we are limiting the number of people who can come to see it.
Okay.
And so that's the physical restraints that we have.
Right.
And we haven't even gotten into other restraints for the whole building. Unless somebody got $6 million in their pocket for a new police department, what are we going to do? Do you want us to tax the taxpayers another 5, 6, whatever it's going to be, to put a police department in? Or can we use that building, which we know we can, because the police department's been in it before, for the bottom part of the building? There's all these competing things going on, and it's all about money. It really is about money. And this has been going on, nothing to do with you people, absolutely what my next statement is. This has been going on for 7 years. So what's the business plan? What's it look like? We talked last time that I would have thought you would have taken away the idea that that upstairs room would have to be ours all the time. And I remember you, sir, saying that that would be a real struggle financially to do that. Have you thought that through already and figured out, if they say we can't have the upstairs, you guys can't have the upstairs because we need it exclusively, not only for us, but for the planning board and the board of adjustment, I would have thought you would have that business model already worked out. Either it can work or it can't work. But I hear today that you haven't thought that through yet. Am I misunderstanding what you said?
No, I think maybe I misunderstood. I wasn't aware there was a complete requirement for every week, every night. It's a
I
possibility.
specifically mentioned that during the budget cycle this past year, we took a week off. Not because we wanted to take a week off, because we didn't have a room to meet. And we've talked about during the budget cycle, 7, 8 meetings easily, depending on how long the cycle takes to do, and that those requirements would be out there all the time. And so I don't know how you could prep for something when we would come in and say, listen, you got to move everything out. We got to move forward. And then there's these other issues about if you get the downstairs of the building, which is I think in your business plan, because I just got it thrown on my desk, is that we then have to find a place long-term for the police department. And how do we do that? Who's going to pay for that? $3 or $4 million for this? $3, $4, $5 million for a police department. We're talking big bucks for a little town like the size of Southport. And I don't know how we weigh all of those different concerns and things in a town that has multiple venues for art already. We have the Franklin Square Park building. We have a community college building. We have multiple businesses on Howe Street that give art classes. We have, at my last count, 17 places that have music. And we have the Ezu Theater. That's, I always mispronounce that word, I'm sorry. We have the Little Theater out there. It's not in the city, but it's available. They have 1 or 2 shows a year. I mean, they really don't maximize the use of that building. Have you reached out to them to see how that might work into your grand plans, which are noble grand plans? But we're competing with, if you have music and it's underwritten by the taxpayers of Southport, and we have 17 businesses having music, is that fair to the businessmen?
Well, we have had discussions with some of the artists and some of the various groups in Southport, and I've found that we have their support in general. In Franklin Square Gallery, and then we have some other folks that we've met with, and we're not intending to supplant any of the businesses or venues in the area, but only enhance them and augment them and sort of be a central hub to support them. So it's similarly, we would ask, how can we help you, not how can we run you out of town?
Trust me, if this was a perfect world, I'd be trying to find some place for you to go for this whole thing, but it's not a perfect world. And I'm just trying to figure out how we weigh all those other massive dollar amount things. Mm-hmm. And I've asked this question to the people at Franklin Square. Of your 200 and some odd members there, how many of them are taxpayers of Southport? And the answer I got was, which answered my question. If you don't want to tell me the answer to that question, we are now bringing all kinds of good people in. They're all nice people, but they have no skin in the game. They're not taxpayers here. So of your program, in your business model, do you have taxpayers who want to participate in the ground floor stuff paying one rate and people who are someplace else paying a different rate? What's your business model for that? Or are we just going to be the playground for other communities?
Well, I don't think it would be specific for whatever programs or artists that we host, or a requirement in general that they be from Southport, but...
That's not what I said, sir. I asked you if you're going to charge them different rates. I didn't say you were going to exclude them.
We're not that far away or that far into the details of the plan, charging different rates or anything like that. At this point, we're just trying to see if we can come to an agreement and move forward on it. But we have not given any real thought to how much we're going to charge particular artists or contributors or.
You don't have a business plan that would tell you what your long-term funding stream is going to be.
No, we have a very basic budget and revenue, but when it comes to whether we would charge different rates to local Southport folks or non-local, we have not made a determination on that, no.
I hope that you all see that I'm not trying to be confrontational here. I truly am not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to figure out how we have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of Southport. We truly have that responsibility. And part of that is trying to figure out how we manage multi-million-dollar projects on a 25-cent budget. And that's the hard thing that we're trying to do. And so we have a limited number of buildings that can accommodate the things that we need to do. And unfortunately, that building can accommodate a big hunk of what we need to do. And I don't know what our option would be. If we did not use that, then what is our option? Because everything, when you push the balloon, it bowls it to someplace else. And so that's what I'm struggling. I'm waiting for somebody to tell me, how do we do that?
And I think tonight's meeting is a good example of what you were talking about before. We have an emergency meeting that was called for tonight at 6 o'clock that we all found out about 3 days ago on the day that it was called. So if you were to have something planned in that space tonight, quite frankly, we're screwed, or we're booting your people out. Yeah. And that's not a great situation for either one of us, and that's not a great way for us to work together.
Sure. No, before you got here, it was just kind of established a minimum requirement, I believe. The majority of you agree that it would be a standing reservation Monday through Friday, ending at 1 p.m. on Friday. So we would have to determine whether we could sustain in our business model without having use of the performance hall for that period of time. And so we could develop the numbers and do maybe come up with something that we could survive on, but we haven't been able to determine that yet. So, I mean, I'd love to look into more costs and real numbers, but they'd all be projections at this point. We know life is different than projections sometimes. And, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your responsibility when it comes to the taxpayers and figuring out the future home of the police station. I'd love to help you there. I don't have an answer for you. What I can tell you is that we're providing an opportunity to not tax the citizens to renovate the building. That's the only thing I can tell you about what we're doing.
And again, my statement has no bearing on anybody in this room, but these discussions have been going on for almost 7 years now.
Mr. Mayor.
Not these same
Yes, sir.
discussions.
So the city you started with is not the city you're dealing with today. Somebody has slipped us a shot of Ozempic, and we're shrinking daily. Our influence is shrinking daily. What we have to lean on in the future is so the future of what we will need, how we will use it, is at stake here. It's not as simple as it was 7 years ago, to be honest. Second thing I want to say is that I think we're pitching heat about the price of fixing this property. Seems like we, for $150,000, went in and abated the majority of it. We've gone in and cleaned?
Alderman Spencer, the other issue is, they're stripping the walls. They're not putting the walls back. So I have no idea. All I know is the dollar amount that the original consultant gave us. Whether that's the right dollar amount is yet to be known, but it was $3-point-something million. And so that's the number I've used, not because I'm smart enough to know that, I'm not. I'm using that number. But it's going to be a considerable amount of money, no matter who takes over the building, to put the walls back together, put the ceiling back together, and we have old electricity lines in there, put the electricity back together and fix it. Whether it's $3 million or $2 million, I have no idea. But when you start adding in all the electronics that we have to throw in as well, it's somewhere between probably $2 and $3 million. And with no budget, or virtually no budget, I think you told me you had 57,000, something like that in the bank?
Well, yeah, contributed to pay architectural fees.
So if that's going to go to the architectural fees, then you're starting off with zero for the group, and they're going to have to raise the money because they are claiming they're going to pay for that. They're going to have a steady stream of money coming in, a business plan, because they're going to have the insurance on the building. We'll have insurance to cover our aspect of it, but they're going to have insurance on it. They're going to have to pay for, if we're not in the building, they're going to have to pay for all the utilities. And those are the issues that the Franklin Square building is struggling with. The same issues is that the business model doesn't match the cost of doing that business.
We give away our asset for $1.
Correct. And so I'm not blaming,
That's
I'm not,
interesting.
and trust me, I'm not trying to knock the Franklin Square building, but it's been in existence for a number of years, and the world has changed since then. Walk by it today and look at the paint on the outside of the building. It's flaking and big flakes coming off the building. It needs to be painted. It needs some renovation. The contract says they're going to do that. There's no money. I know what their budget is. And so there's not enough money to cover that. And so you have to have a steady stream. Maybe you may get some grant money to fix the building up to that point. But until you have a business model that can show that you can pay for everything else along the way, and figure out how Southport is going to be able to house its government, I don't know how we go forward with this.
Could I have a moment here to say, yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Couple of things. One is I think that they've not had the opportunity to get enough information from this board to form a business model, if I had to guess, number one. Number two is we have to be smart, just exactly what you said. We have to be smart about our resources. And smart is, last year we had a study done. We paid $50,000 for a planning study for the police and City Hall. And in that planning study, it told us what we needed for a new police station. And in the presentation in October from the consultant, Mr. Bennett, he said that the first floor of the courthouse was not big enough for a police station. If we're going to do chambers upstairs, think about this. If we're going to do chambers upstairs, we're going to have a nice elevator that goes upstairs. We're going to have an entranceway. Well, I'm just saying, we're going to need an entranceway into the building, so all of that eats into the building. Plus, when you look at the requirements for a new police station, we're trying to be as smart as the fire department. I know everybody teases about the fire department building, but that's a forward-thinking building. They invested wisely taxpayer money to carry us 50 years with that building. That's the kind of approach. I mean, we have Public Works building that needs to be replaced, but we've got that land. That would be a better place for a police station and move Public Works off of House Street. I mean, we've got resources and assets to work through, but we have a situation where we have this nonprofit that we can have a public-private partnership with that have assembled a whole group of smart people to help figure this out. I'm not saying we're making a commitment today. I think what we need to give them is enough information for them to decide, one, does their business model work? And what would that look like? And let them bring that back to us. But I think if I've got the 6-year plan, our capital improvement program, 6 years is $52 million. So I know we're not going to spend $52 million in the next 6 years, but we're going to have a lot of choices, hard choices about all of that. But this is an opportunity to work with somebody that part of the renovation of that building and the maintenance of that building and the future of that building that we know has got to be preserved. We know this. We'd all have to move out of town if we were talking about not preserving it. So that's what I think about that, how we move forward, at least continue to have a dialogue till we know that whether we can come up with something that works for both of us. That's what
So I and I'll turn it over to you in just a second.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Chief Coring, I'm going to call on you. I have spoken to Chief Coring, I can't tell you how many times, and I keep coming back to the same question. Is the first floor of that building sufficient enough for your police department? Or do you need a new building, something different? And Chief, what's the answer you've given me?
So good morning, citizens, mayor, and board. Believe me, I've been asked enough about this already since we've moved, because there's already citizens asking me why we're spending $70,000+ to be in a small space when that building sits there. I have a unique perspective on this because I was a seated alderman when we came out of that building. It was supposed to be a temporary move for the police department to relocate while that building was addressed and taken care of. However, there was change on our board at the time, and projects got in the way, whatever. So there is a rendering. How I like these renderings I see here. I think this is a great idea as well, but there is a rendering of that building as a police department. It was done when I was on the board. We had a local group that drew up the plans, and myself and a couple other aldermen were a committee to review that with the then police chief. So yes, the police department could fit in there. It just depends on how much of the building. The design that they looked at was the police department on the bottom floor. We also had some area upstairs because there are some conference room areas up there. And the larger room could also be used as a multi-purpose room when we did like in-service training and things like that. So I guess to answer your question, yes, it could house. Also, our new architectural firm, Mosley, I did ask them when Manager Therian was here to do a rendering of that building as also a police department. At first, we were not using that location because we knew there was other eyes and ideas for the building. However, they did work on a rendering of what that building could look like if it housed the police department.
That's available to us? That rendering is available to us?
I would have to look. I can't remember if they turned that rendering back over yet or not. That was asked because the first night we came in here with a conceptual drawing of a police department not using that building. Some of y'all spoke that, that did. I know Alderman Carroll right away said that doesn't look like a Southport building, and they just kind of put a design together. That, of course, wasn't the final. But we did look at other locations because when I came here, November will be 6 years already that I've been here as the police chief. When we relocated from the Indian Trail Meeting Hall, there was a lot of outcry for why are we leaving downtown. They wanted the police department in downtown Southport, which I would love that. It'd be great to have a historic, feel down here. However, things changed, so we did relocate. And I lost my train of thought, but so yeah, we did. So I asked him. I get back. Here we go. So when they started doing drawings, we gave them several different locations that the city already owns because again, buying land right now and building a police department, I mean that number figure just keeps going up. So Manager Therian, when we first met, we talked about like the fire substation, what it would look like, and I talked to Chief Drew if we could utilize that space. The public restrooms, in between the public restrooms and the fire substation, what a police department would look like there. However, to build the police department the size of building that we would need, it would have to set back further. It would encroach into Franklin Square Park, and we don't want to disturb Franklin Square Park and certainly take out any trees. So we did look at other locations.
What was the architectural firm? Mosley,
Mosley,
did you
the
say?
one that we've hired, yes, ma'am. And they do have, I'll have to check back with him because it kind of fell asleep at the wheel, if you will, but we did ask them to utilize some of our already owned spaces. And the courthouse, I did ask him to show us a rendering of that building as a police department to bring back because it was asked of the manager.
So Alderman Mosteller, to follow up on our conversation here, it is, in my mind, it is not just whether or not the creative arts people can come up with a business plan. It's we have to come up with our business plan if we don't use the downstairs for the police department. And while we do have land and we do have some buildings that could get knocked down, because then we'd have to move the public works people someplace, and they'd have to build their building, and then we'd have to build the police department on that building, and the first rendering that Alderman Carroll appropriately said, what? Was $7 million, if I remember correctly.
I think that's the price tag just for the building right now, I believe.
Just for the building.
Yes.
And we didn't put a chair in it yet.
Right. And when that figure came out again, Manager Therian at the time said, well, let's look at already city-owned properties. And it's interesting that she mentions the Public Works facility, because when I was on the board before, I think in 2014, there was a study that was done, and then they were talking about relocating the police department because that was still on the table, and one of the options was to build it at the Public Works facility site at that time. And at that time, it was a 4,000 square foot building that was needed. And they gave different options. One rendering was to build it back where the original police department was. When my father was the police chief, the police department sat where the public restrooms facility is. And interestingly enough, it was a building about that size. And when the police chief came in behind my dad, I think it was in 89 or 90, they relocated the police department into City Hall because that building needed to be replaced. So they temporarily relocated them in City Hall. So basically, the police department has been temporarily relocated since about 89 or 90. Just a little history, but so.
I guess my point is that taking the Public Works building down, cost, building a police department, cost.
Sure.
Putting a new building for the Public Works, cost.
Mhm.
Where do we get all that money from? I just don't know where we get that money from.
Yes, sir.
As opposed to using the current building that we have, which we believe has the capacity to house the police department in it, and have an exclusive chambers that can be used at any time for all three boards. And there's a room up there big enough to, if we had to have a closed session, we can walk from the big room into this conference room there and have a closed session. So it meets all of those needs. And again, it's all about dollars, not about whether or not one wants to have more art or less art. That has nothing to do with it. Art, I travel the world, and I go to every art place I can find. I mean, all my family is into art, so it's not like I'm dragging my knuckles on the ground here and don't want it.
Mr. Mayor, we got a question in the audience. Can we?
And I'll ask Alderman, I'll turn the podium back over. I'll ask for that drawing, Alderman Davis, to see, because I think that it was somewhere to be done. I just don't know the status of it, so thank you. It is Mosley, the one that we hired to look at both the City Hall and the police department.
Alderman Spencer.
I'm Tom Bice. My question was, we talked about a $50,000 consultant that came up and evaluated things and came up with a proposal and said that that was not suitable for a police station. And now we have renderings and drawings and all these other possibilities. I was wondering on the timing of that issue. Is all this work done before the consultant, or is that a $50,000 expense that we're willing to put over here and say, okay, that was another consultant we paid? So
well said, sir, because I didn't know we had the renderings of the police department until we just talked.
I think if you look at the renderings that exist for what is proposed to this stage for the Art Center, there's been a lot of work done and a lot of money that's been invested in getting us to that point. Now, I think what I've personally heard is some of the requirements that are mandatory for the board and the meetings and those types of things. And so we know that has to be accommodated. But in June, when we made a presentation, we were talking about having 2 brainstorming sessions to try to determine what it is we are going to propose for the Art Center, and then what are the main requirements for this board and for the city meetings. And now we've heard, some drop dead, things that are requirements. So to me, a brainstorming session would be sitting together with the best thoughts and minds that accommodate the city the best it can and come up with that plan, and then a business plan can be developed. Now, we've spent the last year, our board, with people with a lot of different disciplines, going over and meeting every Wednesday to try to define requirements, space, future programs, and what we could do to make that not a gallery. That's not what the discussion is, another art gallery. It's the Center for the Arts, which is all media. And it's not a big, we're not going to replicate music and bands that exist up and down the waterfront. That's incorrect. We're looking at traveling musicians and shows and exhibits and sculptures and different things. Now, y'all can have the best looking entrance to any boardroom because it will be full of art, and it comes and goes, and it will draw people to the city, and they can go to other galleries as well and spend money. So we talked, so all those things. We have construction sub-team that's been working on different architectural renderings and structures for the last year. We've got another sub-team that is responsible for programs and operations. So for the business plan, yes, we started talking about insurance requirements, insuring the building, property and casualty. We've had all those discussions. And we know those are things that will cost money, and we know things that we'll have to establish an operating budget to compensate and pay for all those things initially and on an ongoing basis. And so you mentioned all the AV requirements. Well, the walls are tore down now. The best time to accommodate AV and video and streaming technologies are to do it when you have access to open walls. We've had conversations that said every room in the building should be equipped with audio, video, landlines, and a distribution amplifier so you can pick and choose what audio and video goes where. And that's how it should be set up if you're going to do a first-class building and not something that, we come in after the fact and say, yes, we got to put up screens here, a TV here. It's made to accommodate for that. And if it's a board meeting like this, sit on the stage and it's already wired. You don't have to do it every time you have a meeting. But the 7-year, I keep hearing 7 years. I've only lived in Southport for 4, and I've heard about it for 4 years. But it's not like all along the way with the memorandums of understandings, the former Up Your Arts delivered on those documents. And if we needed an extension for some reason, the last memorandum of understanding said that we would form a new nonprofit organization and select and put in place a board. That was done last October, a year ago last week. And we've been working on this and trying to come up with a solution. Do we have all the answers? No. Absolutely not. But we have a group of 20 people that are willing to do the work, the legwork. I heard y'all say, yeah, y'all can get grants, and we can get grants. But you know what? We have professional grant writers, and they're donating their time. So we could get somebody from the city and take those resources and work on grants, or you can use the grants that we can help develop. But I just don't want you to think that we haven't been doing a lot of work and due diligence and trying to define what it can be and what it could be for the city of Southport. If you have something right here in the center of town that's an attraction and offers a benefit to not only our residents but also the people coming into this town, that's what we have a vision to create, and there's a lot of documentation around it. If you look at our floor plans, those are movable and workable spaces. They can be exhibits, they could be lectures, they could be meeting rooms. So for a couple things, the monies that we have gone into architects. We had mold remediation studies done when we had access to the building, 2 years ago. So when I heard the $50,000 investment on what it could, what of all the properties, we just need to get, I believe, smarter together and look at it as a collaborative solution. We're all residents here. We pay taxes, you know. So, you know, it doesn't seem at this point that we're really trying to come up with a collaborative approach to it. It still seems to me that it's either going to be a police department or administration building, and the perception is it's just another art gallery, and our group, you know, can't come up with the money and don't know how to operate a business. So for clarity, you know, I just wanted to, you know, I saw, you know, the chambers, and there's obviously dedicated, you know, rooms but to block out, you know, I think part of the collaborative approach and really sitting down there and having a brainstorm, I don't know how a true brainstorm works with the official processes we have, but figure those things out and go from there. I mean, you know, so anyway, that's what I have to say.
So admittedly, I did think this was going to be a little bit more of a workshop and a joint meeting, and that's just my ignorance. I didn't know any better. You know, one of the things.
There's no reason it still can't be.
Yeah, no, wholeheartedly. And so, you know, I think, you know, one of the things that we have to decide as a board is, what is this going to look like? You know, we've got Chief Coring that's saying certainly we could put a police department in there. We've got other experts saying not so much maybe. And so we really need to decide what that looks like. Is that the direction we want to go, or do we want to continue to have these kinds of conversations? Because my non-negotiable Monday through Friday won't matter if it's really our intent to put the police department back in that building.
I think you've nailed it right on the head there. This board has to decide what they want to do. And there's no doubt in my mind that if the board was to devote to allow the creative arts people to take it over, that they're more than skillful enough to put a plan together. The issue that we have is that it's not only what we want to do to make us feel good, it's what we can afford to do for the taxpayers. And that is the big crux that I'm stuck with. The idea of the program is a very good concept. I don't negate that. I just say that I don't know where we're going to get all the other money to do all the other things that we talk about, and this board has talked about. This board, the last board, the board before that has talked about for years about, well, we could do this or we could do that. Except there's one thing: there's no money. And so how do we do that? If somebody in this group has a good idea of how we can raise all of that money, I'm more than happy to talk to them about it.
Yeah, I think one of the other things is, you know, what is the timing for the money? You know, you've got, I think I wrote down a multi-year goal, and, you know, the city sees a need to go ahead and start doing something.
No, I agree with you there, and that's an elephant in the room. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to ask for people, private citizens. But you know, as it was said, we have developed a plan, but it is just a plan. We haven't started. We're assembled and we're ready to start applying for those grants. But it's been done before. I think that's the question. So we have some models to go by. They've done it in Cary, they've done it in Carrboro, Floyd, Virginia, they've done it in Shelby with the Earl Scruggs Center, and most recently Lincoln County have all done a very almost identical project to this, and it started, you know, much in the same way that we've done it. So, you know, I can't give you a guarantee on a timeline. What we have is just a projection. It's just like anything else, but we have people in place. We've been talking about it for a year. How are we going to do this? And it's like, be careful what you wish for. Now you have to raise the money. And so we're very aware of that. And then after it's completed, you know, what are we going to do? It's like running a full-time, you know, corporation to keep this thing going. As you mentioned, there's struggles with foundations running other buildings. But you know what? We've got people that are committed to do it. And they're going to show up. We've estimated there's an operating budget of about $250,000 a year, and that money's got to come from somewhere. So that's when we were talking about performances might bring in the bulk of that, but there's other ways to supplement the revenue. So we're going to have a real discussion on how likely is it, and that's from an operational standpoint, assuming we get this building renovated for our purpose. So is it sustainable at that point? But yeah, you bring up a great question. How are we going to get the money? Well, we'll follow the way that it's been done before. We'll apply for grants, try to get the bulk of it through various sources, matching grants and what have you. And then once we have taken care of that, we will, have campaigns for locals to donate money and things like that. But first and foremost, we would probably, and we have other people from fundraising available today that may be able to articulate it a little bit better than I can about what's out there. But there's several endowments, and these are available for historic preservation and then arts and culture. And so this has both of those things that could be pursued from various sources. So, the timeline, and of course, we had an estimate of about 4 years, so to reach the target goal. And now I don't know when contractually we would be able to, and we have people from building and construction, but how much money do we need in the bank to engage with a construction company to start the work? And those are other types of things that we have to discuss, but as far as from top to bottom, we estimated about 4 years to get the money. Now, whether construction can begin before that, I don't know. We'd have to talk to someone in the construction committee and see, what that looks like.
One thing I hear you saying is, we can't really do anything till we reach some sort of an understanding as to how the building's going to go.
That's what I've been maintaining, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Let's say we reach some sort of an agreement and fundraising starts. What would be the lag time before you go out and start asking people to donate money, give money, start raising money, and money actually coming in so stuff can actually happen? Because until you do that, then the building's just going to sit there. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it's been sitting there forever and a day. Mm-hmm. So is there a lag? Have you even come up with some sort of a guess as to what that lag time might be? Because I know it's not going to be instantaneous.
I don't know. I can't speak on, what that likelihood is, but I'll go back and use these prior examples and see what their timelines were, and that might give us a more realistic idea of how it's worked in the past as far as from the time they got access and the day they started raising money until completion. And so maybe we can average those out and come up with a more realistic expectation.
An interesting question would be, for those jurisdictions, was the building in question that was going to be taken over needed for any other purpose?
That's something else
we keep coming back. And I think you guys have the wherewithal to be able to, in 4 years, probably come up with money. The question is then, the taxpayers have to come up with all the other money for the other, just taking a building down, putting a building up, building another building, and we're talking about millions and millions of dollars over and above what it would cost to renovate that building. We have to keep coming back to that topic because of our fiduciary responsibility. And I'm waiting for somebody to help me with that issue. Where do we get the money? If we give the building to you guys, what do we do? I don't know the answer.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm specifically here for this one building and for one purpose. I can't help you with the other responsibilities. I'd love to, but.
The one thing that I would note too is that the Public Works building is getting at the end of its life. If anybody's been in there, we know that that building is going to have to be replaced. That's part of my conversation about why it doesn't really need to be on Howe Street. that's sort of our seminal spot. We can find land outside of the edge of town for public works to be in, or some to that extent. So that for me is trying to look long term. I think that our fiduciary responsibility is to spend the best money the best way for the longest bounce.
I fully agree with you, and that building probably should have come down years ago. But it houses the building, houses the public works people, which we'd have to build a new building for them, and this new police department, which was estimated back, I don't know, a year or so ago for $7 million. Certainly we could cut $2 million off of that because it had bell towers and all kinds of stuff attached to it. But let's just say it's $5 million. Then where's the $5 million coming from? I don't know where the answer to that is.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I think that we're going to spend the money, whether it's $4 million, $5 million, or whatever the number is. We're probably going to spend the same money in a new building as we would this building, frankly. And a lot of people want to throw out a $3 million number, and that's just not realistic to renovate this building. I think it's probably $5 million to renovate this building. Whether we do it or somebody else does it, I think that's the reality. So, I think we need to have a conversation about the police department. We've already done, we've got a good understanding here of what to expect. They've got homework to do based on what we've collected here today, and now we need to know why Chief Coring and the Mosley, who did this? Yeah, are not aligned. I'd like to know why that is.
So the takeaways, Noah, the takeaways would be, we have to figure out the difference between the Mosley program and the drawings that we've had the city's already engaged in about putting a police department in there. The takeaway for your organization is, if we had to use the upstairs exclusively 5 days a week, no design things behind your head, no stuff like that. You came in on Friday afternoon, and that's the time that you had. Could you survive on that? Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is an important aspect that I should have made clearer. It was clear in my head, but apparently not clear in everybody else's head, so it's my fault. That's my bad. That's an important factor to figure out for your business plan. Can you survive on that? Rushing in there on Friday afternoon to put everything together that you haven't put together before because we've had the room, and can you make the whole thing work that way? So if you could take that as a takeaway. Sir, is there any other takeaways from your perspective that we are lacking, that you think one side or the other should be working on?
No, I think we hit kind of what the important things are, what you guys need, and we're going to figure out whether we can live with that in harmony and survive and be able to maintain realistically with our business plan, or if it can be modified to meet those needs or not. So it's sort of like a feasibility study that we'll conduct in the next week or so too. I'll schedule some meetings on our end and see what we can come up with.
Can I ask you another question? In the discussions that you've had, was there going to be outdoor music? Because Up Your Arts had all kinds of things for outdoors. So my concern was, there's a funeral going on, there's a wedding going on, and we have competing music blaring up and down the street there, because you've got 3 churches right in that one little quadrant. So would that prevent you from having, if we, I'm not saying we were going to put this on you, but if that was the case, and we said your music's going to be inside, like indoor, like an establishment is, would that cause you a financial hardship?
Well,
And I'm not
It
asking you
looks
to
like
answer
Tom-
that
I
question,
don't-
but I would, as a takeaway, if you could think about that question, I'm not asking you to give me an answer right now.
Yeah,
Well, Lo, just to piggyback on the mayor, may I, for just a second? So why don't we go ahead and actually talk about that? So if this is going to go forward and we're going to go that direction, let's go ahead and give them the homework now, the non-negotiables. Let them do that while we're also having our conversation so that they can come back. Because when we come back, I don't want to have this conversation again. I don't want there to be some other requirement that we hadn't taken into consideration.
That was my point of saying, what are our takeaways so that we both have whatever we're supposed to be researching, and when we come back, we have answers on both sides of that equation. What does that look like? Because you're absolutely correct. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to the taxpayers to keep lingering. We got to make some decisions. We got to move forward. Whatever it's going to be, we got to get the answers.
I recall from our last discussion, I think it was June, kind of went by in a blur because we were in, I think, our 7th or 8th, almost day-long budget meeting. But at any rate, one of the things that did stick with me was that you do intend to rent the upstairs space for weddings and other things. And this is a major revenue for the city. So you would be competing with the city because your venue might be more appealing to some people. And I just read this past week a article, I think it was in the New Yorker, comparing the average cost of weddings around the country. North Carolina is the 3rd most expensive place to have a wedding. All things considered, catering, music, all of that, but the venue itself in North Carolina averages $9,000, which means we're undercharging, I believe. But if you were competing with us, this would diminish some of our anticipated revenue. And I understand that, I remember that you said if you couldn't have weddings, you couldn't afford to do this.
One of the things that,
If that's not true, then, okay.
I don't.
Go ahead, Frank.
obviously, you guys have done a tremendous amount of work. You put together some great minds. You sat down and you've thought a lot of things through. During that period of time, have you come up with some things from your perspective that are non-negotiable, some things that you absolutely must have in order for you to make it fly?
I think we have, and really, it's just the all-encompassing, performance space that we all want, and that kind of is the most important thing. We want to make sure that we can use that, and if it's relegated to weekends, then we have to determine whether or not that's going to work for us. And so that's what we're taking from today, and I'm going to discuss that with the rest of the board and see if this is going to be a good fit.
It's fair to say we're all on the same page with regards to the Monday through Friday, right? Not that we're voting, but if we were to move forward with something like this, that would be a non-negotiable for us.
That, as far as I'm concerned, that is absolutely blocked out. Okay, so could we try to figure out a date to come back so we don't drag this on? We don't have to do it right this minute, sir, but if you could get back to this city manager with a couple of dates that we could come together.
Absolutely.
So we can, and provided we have a room to do that in, we can figure out where we are. And as we go through between now and that date, if something pops into any of your heads that you want to have us look at, please don't hesitate to send something to the city manager to say, would you please consider this or consider that? Mm-hmm. Let's get it all on the table so we can make a decision.
I think that's a good plan.
Okay. Is there any other discussion points from the board? Is there anything else, sir, from you or your committee? committees?
I think we're okay. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Oh, wait, looks like we have one.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm Brad Sebaldson, and I'm stepping away from the board thinking right now and thinking as a citizen. And first of all, I think, does this building meet the Arts Center's requirements, or does it meet the city's full requirements? When we think about the historic value of that, that's a public place. That's a place where both citizens and visitors should be able to go for some reason other than to pay a traffic ticket or to be jailed or to go to a meeting on the second floor. The variety of things that we plan to offer, and it's not wedding receptions over and over. It's an event space, it's a meeting space for rentals, for sure. But I think, you know, when we speak about, we have arts here, we have music here, we have this and that, the city's in kind of the same position. You have a city hall here, you have a police department there, you have a fire department here, public works, wherever, and animal control. It's time that the city, I think, puts their efforts into the long-term plan of where can we have a city complex and work on that and get it pulled together, both for value, sell off some of the properties that the city may own that would be more valuable to someone else, but not that historic building. Let's keep that open to, you know, I volunteer at the Visitor Center. People are interested in the history of Southport. And it needs to be something where we can share the history and where we can show chamber music, jazz, arts of touring shows, as was mentioned too. The opportunities are endless as far as what we've been brainstorming as the events kind of position that we're in. But that's something I wanted to get in, think about it, whose needs are being most fulfilled with this building.
Mr. Mayor, I think there was one more who wanted to speak.
I'm sorry, is there somebody else? Did you want to speak, ma'am?
While she's on her way up, can we also work on getting all this information about the police station? Chief Corrin's going to work on. Okay, let's just gather it all and distribute it.
Hi, what I'm hearing is that everyone needs a place to meet. Vicki Lozier, I was the Department of Homeland Security Grants Manager for 15 years. I managed the Assistance to Firefighter grant after 9/11, bought all the trucks for the fire departments, all their equipment, and then I was put on the Border Patrol, and I flew the Rio Grande, and I went all over Niagara Falls, and we bought all the special equipment for them also, Operation Stone Garden. I have a lot of experience in federal grants, and the year that I've been here, I've had a list of about 20 different programs that we can get funding from. And when you're talking about all this together, it needs to be together because we can get more grants. More we offer in the building, the more we can actually get more grants for the police department, for your meetings even. So they're just unlimited. And I just wanted to tell you about my possibility.
Could I ask you a favor?
Sure.
See that young man over there? Could you walk over and make sure he has your name and contact information?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, there's a you know, you're planning for the next 60 years, whatever. As someone who has grown up here, I'm tired of entertaining people. This is a place to live, not to party, not to sing and dance and play karaoke. It's got out of control with our tequila bars and our... This is not a family place. This is a party place. You want more party. I'm tired of entertaining people. It's not profitable. Look at St. James. They don't entertain people. They get twice as much tax money as we do. Why are we entertaining people? Why are we begging them to come and take our parking spots and our places at our restaurants? It's not making us any more. And the truth is, we're so migratory. People are leaving here every 3 to 5 years. How are we going to keep a consistent board of anything? A consistent idea of what we're going to have when people are changing every day because they come for the party and they leave because the party gets old. I'm tired of entertaining people.
Tom Bice again. I just want to make, Mark, all I heard was family, which is great, but you keep mentioning party, party, party. The Art Center is not a party. It's trying to establish a culture that attract people that come here with families, and there's family things to do. So when we're thinking about it, please understand, we're trying to create something that is worth seeing, experiencing, and those types of things. Things that all of our families would want to bring their out-of-town guests to, our grandkids to, because it's an experimental place. It's not a party. So just when we hear words like that used over and over again, which influences decision and voting processes, we all get it. But let's be clear on what it is and isn't. That's all I would ask. And we heard about music playing and their outside music. Well, our discussions are a Saturday afternoon chamber music playing outside. It's not, bands playing out on the front lawn. And I would just say that I don't believe that would be any more of an audio interruption than if you had a police department flying out of there with, sirens going.
Tom,
So-
the only reason that I brought up the music is
What?
from your predecessor and what he told me he wanted to have. So I didn't know if that had changed. And he clearly told me,
Yeah.
we're going to have bands out there and we're going to have that kind of loud music. And so I just say we should at least have that discussion. What is it that you want to do? If you're going to have chamber music out there and we can make sure that we can work on that, that's
but
not
I
the
just wanna
that's
share-
not the issue. I just know what I was told by Up Your Arts.
Yeah, and I've heard that comment several different times along the way, and that was my clarification. It's not that we'll use a rooftop and start playing music when we know there's a church service or some other significant thing going on at the churches. But also, I do know if we have a police department with police cars, they don't, leave quietly either. So, my only point was, Mark, I wanted just to respond about the party. If you don't enjoy music and you don't enjoy interactive art exhibits and don't think art can really and significantly contribute to our city, then call it a party and let's make decisions accordingly. But if we're going to sit down and try to work together, then I think that would, we've agreed to take some next steps, and I think further definitions. We should be able to come up with a list that we present and get answers back. I mean, if we're both making go, no-go decisions, if we can make it work, then we have to get to that point. And I think that's our next step. But I just wanted to clarify that because it's, we're putting a lot of effort into a non-party event.
No alcohol.
Who said
No
that?
alcohol will be served in this building, right?
No, I'm not going to say that.
I didn't think
But
you
that
would.
doesn't, just because you do doesn't make it a party. Yeah.
So, yeah, Mark.
If you don't drink, that's your
So,
prerogative.
Tom, just for clarification, and for the clarification of the group,
No, I'm,
the issue that I brought up for music is for discussion. It has been brought up by one person, me. I don't make the decisions here. This board makes the decisions. And I just want to have that discussion so that we both understand what the program's going to look like. Because the selling points prior to your arrival was X. If that's not the case, and it doesn't seem to be the case, please just tell us what your thoughts are, what you're going to do. And we can weigh all of that together. And certainly chamber music is a lot different than headbanging music. So that is
Well,
why it was brought up.
In my main, and I agree 100%, and I think we have done programming ideas, and we broke it down into 3 different phases of what you could start with and what you could build to. As long as somebody is willing to look at that information, have discussions around it, you can say that will never happen, and we don't want that, and we build programs around that. But to me, I'm just trying to make it, open-ended in a discussion. And if we reach the point sooner or later that let's get clarification on what we all think we can do and what you think, I say you, the board thinks it should be done. Now, whether it's we spend $5 million or you spend $5 million, we'll try to get grants, but we can't even get grants until we can come up with a lease agreement that defines space requirements, insurances, all those things before we can get started. So hopefully we can either get to that phase or we'll ask.
We're moving towards a decision somewhere down the line, hopefully sooner than later. The one thing that I will request of you is that whatever your documents are from the meeting that we'll have, is that we have them before the meeting. When you put something on my desk, I can't study it and listen to you and come up with questions all at the same time. Maybe that's my shortcoming, but all the teaching classes I ever took says don't do that. So I just ask you to give me the information beforehand. Is there anything else from the board? All right, not hearing any, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it.